Hey there, how you doing? Kim Constable here again. So nice to see you on day 3 of this free fitness mindset and motivation challenge. I sometimes forget the name of it because it's so goddamn long, and it really was actually very hard to name this challenge because I wanted it to be about mindset, but I wanted to give a specific result that people were going to get. But it's very hard to give a specific result that you're going to get after only 5 days. And I knew that this material was like super, super valuable to teach. So I did my best to name it. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I hope you're getting a lot out of it. You are going to love today's session. Today's session is called D-Day, and D stands for data or data, depending on where you are in the world. But D stands for data. And today we are going to talk about the most important first step that you need to do, or the thing that you need to do next once you have identified your why and identified your why not, which is what you did in days 1 and 2. So hopefully you have a really strong sense of why. And if you're still exploring that, that's totally okay. I have loved your questions. I have loved seeing your posts in the group. And if, like I said, if you're still exploring what that is for you, that's totally fine. You don't need to have it after 5 days. Some people spend their entire lives searching for their why. So you just do the best that you can do, and just keep committed to the process. And I promise you, you will find your way. But today, we're going to talk about data. So this concept is not going to be new to you. To many of you who have taught me or who have heard me teach in the past, this is something that I've been teaching for a long, long time. However, what I will say is if you've heard me teach this concept before, of course, there's some new stories and things in here because I'm always evolving and changing. And do you know what the interesting thing is? Actually, as I evolve and change, and as I grow more as an individual, I keep like unlocking and accessing these early memories. Like I'm very, very good at accessing early memories anyway. But it's funny, the more I grow, the more I work, it's almost like the more my subconscious mind opens up and the more easily I can access memories. So today I've actually got some really good memories to share with you and stories. But if you have heard me teach this concept before, please don't think that it doesn't apply to you, and please don't switch off, because what I have found is people who have actually heard this concept before and even done the work before and then go back and do the work again actually get more out of it than those who are completely new to it. So I would encourage you to stick with it. Listen to what I'm going to teach you and do the work, because if you've heard it before, you're definitely going to get more out of it. So, I'm going to start with a story of what I'm going to teach today. So, I remember whenever I was about, let me think, what age would I have been? I can't remember. I think I must have been in high school, but I think I was in second year in high school. So, I would have been about 13, I think. I think I was in high school. Maybe it was in first year. So I was about 11, 12, 13, something around there. So it wasn't super young, right? But I was about 11, 12, or 13. And I remember I definitely was in high school. I was in second year in high school. So I was about 13. And one of the compulsory classes that you had to take was PE, physical education. And this particular day we were doing PE, and I was always quite athletic, right? Not like super athletic, but well, I was actually quite athletic. I could move well, I could run well. I was never the fastest runner, I was never the highest jumper, but I was able to move my body pretty efficiently. And so they started us this one day on practicing. It was in the sports hall, practicing hurdles. So I don't know whether you guys are familiar with hurdles or not, but they had us doing hurdles, and I realized that actually I was quite good at hurdles. Now, I was quite good at most things that I did whenever I first did them, in terms of I could pick, I tend to pick things up very quickly. I'm a very, very fast learner. And so I was doing hurdles this particular day. And I remember the PE teacher was praising me for being really good at hurdles. She was saying, "Oh my goodness, you picked this up so fast. You're great. You have a natural technique." So she was really praising me. And what you're going to learn, I've actually just had this realization. She was pushing on all my buttons, actually, which the buttons that had been installed, the praise buttons that had been installed. So as she was telling me, "You're really good at this and you have a natural technique," whatever, I was thinking, "Oh, right. Okay. This is fantastic. I must be pretty good at this." So I started then practicing the hurdles more, and I went to a couple of the athletics training days, and and then we would have done games or athletics I think it was on a Thursday after school. We went out to the sports track and we did it. And so I kind of began to pick up hurdles, or began to practice hurdles a little more. And then it turns out that a couple of weeks later, or whatever, there was an athletics meet. And the sports teacher asked me, did I want to go to the athletics meet and compete in the hurdles? And I said, well, yes, okay, great. Sounds great. So this particular day, anyway, I was a wee bit nervous, before going, as you would be. It was something was completely new to me. I wasn't used to going. My parents had divorced at the time, so it was my weekend to stay with my dad and my stepmom. And I can't even remember how I got there or whatever, but my parents were not the kind of parents that would have like shown up at your athletics meet and, been there to cheer you on and support you. My mom was like, go have fun. That's great. Have a good time. But they definitely wouldn't have shown up. I'm much more that way with my kids. I will show up and be there and support them and help them. And so not that it's a criticism of them, it just isn't who they were. And so I went to this athletics meet this particular day, and I remember I was warming up. And as I warmed up, and I warmed up over the hurdles, and I sprinted a little bit and went back and forth, I really felt quite alone actually. Now that I really accessed the memory, I remember just feeling nervous, and it wasn't that I felt alone. I guess I had never really competed before, and you'll find out why in a minute. But I'd never really competed before in an individual sport like that, and I definitely didn't really know how to handle it, or how to cope with it, or how to cope with the stress or the pressure or whatever. So as I'm warming up and it's getting closer and closer to the time of my competition, and I see the other competitions are starting and the kids are running, and it's the 100 meters and this kind of stuff. And I had never won any like 100-meter runs or 400-meter runs. I had been in sports days and everything in school. But like I said, I was a good athlete, but I was never an exceptional athlete. I always finished, but I definitely did not finish first, second, or third. So I was warming up for the hurdles, and I remember it came closer and closer to the time of my race, and I began to get more and more and more nervous. And for some reason, I just lost complete confidence. And I thought, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can do this. All my negative self talk came up. It's like, I can't do this. And so I pretended to go over on my ankle. I, went over one of the hurdles, and then I went over my, and I was like, and I kind of cried out a little bit, like put on a whole performance about it, like cried out and went over my ankle. And of course, then I went to speak to one of the coaches, and I was like, I've gone over my ankle. I can't run. And they examined my ankle and said, well, there's no swelling. Where's it sore? And I was like, oh, it's there. And it's really quite sore. And I think actually I did maybe go over my ankle just a little tiny bit. And that's when I had the idea. I realized, oh, I could actually use this as an excuse to get out of, get out of doing the race. So I said, I'm not going to be able to do the race. And they were like, oh, well, that's a pity because you came all this way, but like, that's fine. No problem at all. I remember just feeling immense relief that I didn't have to do the race. And so I then went home. That I watched the rest of them do the race. And there was a part of me felt like, oh, like I'd really missed out. Like I should have done it. There was a part of me felt shame. There was a part of me felt guilt. All of these emotions came up. But at the end of the day, I didn't do the race. And the part of me that, was self-reflective and was looking at the fact that I had lied to get out of doing the race was, I just took that little part and I just pushed it aside. Like I pushed her down there and I slapped a lid on her, and I was like, you don't get to have a conversation here. And I pushed it away. And then I went home, to my dad's for the weekend, and I was telling my stepmom, oh, I couldn't do the race. I went over my ankle. And then people would say, how did your athletics meet go? And I would say, oh, I went over my ankle. I couldn't do the race. And they were like, oh no, how annoying for you. And of course, everyone believed me, which made it even worse, because as they totally believed my lie and didn't question it, I felt worse and worse and worse and worse. But again, the worse I felt, the more I just pushed it aside. And to be honest, when I was younger, I was a total and utter liar. Like I wasn't, I wasn't dishonest insofar as like I stole, or I did anything super bad, but definitely I would have told people what they wanted to hear. I would have pretended to be something that I wasn't. I would have lied about what time I'd been out or in, or where I'd been, to my parents and this kind of stuff. Like I really was a pathological liar as a child. And that's what happens when you control and punish children. You turn them into liars. So I definitely was a liar. And so I lied to get out of the meet. And the part of myself that felt guilty, the part of myself that didn't feel good about my decision, I just pushed it to the side so that I didn't have to deal with it. Now, why am I telling you this story? Because there's something about competing with others that shows you where you are limited. I'm just glancing at my notes here just to make sure I'm going to say what I want to say. So, what I've written here is competing with others shows you where you're limited. It gives you reality data about where you are in your journey. I was so scared of failing, I couldn't bring myself to get the data. Why not? And so that's really what happened. I was there at the athletics meet. I was so terrified of something. I don't know what it was. Now that I'm looking back, I was terrified of getting the data. I was terrified of failing. I was terrified of coming in last. I was terrified of all of these things, but all of these things were just a representation of something else that I was most scared of. And what I was most scared of was really getting data that I wasn't as good as I pretended to be. It's not even as good as I thought I was because I knew deep down that I was not as good as I pretended to be or as others thought that I was. And that's a really important part here. And so there's a study that was done years ago on kids. Where two huge groups of kids were given tasks, right? So they were given pretty complex tasks, and they had to, complete these different tasks. And the groups of kids were split into two, and one group was praised excessively for being smart, right? For being talented, for being smart. Oh my God, look at you got right. You're so talented. You're so smart. Some of them they got wrong. Some of them they got right. It was fine, but they were all praised for being smart. The other group was praised for effort. It didn't matter if they had succeeded or failed. They were praised for the amount of effort they had put in to try to solve the complex problems. And then the two groups were given another set of tasks, another set of problems, and the problems ranged in difficulty from easy to hard. And 100% of the children that had been praised for being talented and smart chose the easiest tasks in the groups of tasks in the second set of tasks because they were ones that they knew they could succeed at. And the other group that were praised for effort, 100% of the children chose the difficult tasks, the ones that they were more than likely to fail at, but that were more difficult and therefore would require more effort. And so this study really showed what is becoming more and more and more apparent. I actually learned this years ago, thank God, when my kids were super young. I read a book by Matthew Sid, Syed, Sid, I think it's pronounced, and it's called The Myth of Talent and the Power of Practice. And he talks about how praising children for talent is the worst possible thing we can do for them. We should always praise them for effort and for practice. And this study became really showed up why this is so important. So the kids that were praised for effort wanted to keep the praise for effort, and it actually made them work harder. The ones that were praised for talent worked less hard and so didn't achieve as much because they didn't want to lose the praise for being talented. Another little point on that is that this is just my take on the study. The thing about praising someone for talent is it's not reproducible. Kids don't know how they got talented. They didn't work for it, they didn't achieve it, it wasn't something that they had earned. It's just someone else's judgment of you. It's an overall concept that our parents and loved ones love to apply to children. But they don't know how to reproduce it is the issue. Effort, they know how to reproduce. They know how to put in more effort. They know how to do that effort again. Whenever they're praised for effort, they can look at it and say, oh, wow, I did this and this and this and this, and that got loads of praise. So I'm going to do this and this and this and more again next time. That is something that they can reproduce. Talent is not something that they can reproduce. But here's the problem. Our parents, our well-intended parents and grandparents, don't know how to praise children for effort. So they praise for talent. They don't know that it's super important to praise for effort. They think that it's better for a child's self-esteem to praise for talent. And this is just born from the fact that it feels so good when someone admires or praises us. Like whenever, someone says, oh, wow, you're so beautiful. Oh, look at that. You're so lovely. Your hair is so lovely today. Or they say, that was a fantastic job that you did. Anytime we get praise, it feels good. We get a little dopamine hit, right, from feeling good. And so we want to pass that good feeling on to our children. And so because we want to make our children feel good in the moment, we don't think about the long-term effects or consequences of how we make them feel good. And we don't realize that you can make a child feel super good from praising their effort in the same way that you can from praising their talent. But when you praise their effort and you say, wow, look how hard you've worked on this. Like whenever a child, I don't, my kids aren't young anymore, but whenever a little child brings me a picture and goes, look at my picture that I did, like Leo, Christina's son, who Christina, my COO, she brings Leo, her son, into the office sometimes. And he's 5 now, I think. He might be 6. Oh my God. Is he 5 or 6? He's 6. And she brings him into the office sometimes. And no, he's not. He's 5. Christina's going to be like, he's 5 or whatever he's shouting out. Anyway, she brings him into the office sometimes, and he'll like draw a picture or whatever. And then he'll come into my office and he'll show it to me. And he'll be like, look, Kim, look at the picture that I drew. And I always take a moment and I say, oh my goodness, look how hard you have worked on this picture. That's what I say. I never say, wow, you're so talented. I say, look how hard you've worked on this picture. Look at how beautifully you have drawn the sun. Look at the amount of effort you've put into coloring in between the lines. So I will always praise his effort. And he glows with the praise. He says, yeah. And I say, how did you learn to color in between, like, and color in the lines like that? And he'll say, I just worked really hard at it. And I'd be like, well done, you. That's fantastic amount of effort. Like I always praise effort. And that's what you have to do for young kids in order to build a really solid foundation of hard work for them moving into the future. The problem is, most of us here, I would imagine, are over the age of 40 or 50 or 60. We're all mature women, right? There may be some of you younger than that, but we're all mature women. And of our generation, and even to be honest, the generation that exists now, I guess, because not everybody knows this, the tide is turning. But of our generation, we were all praised for talent. Our parents were not self-aware. Like self-awareness in the way that it's a concept and a thing that exists these days did not exist whenever we were younger. So we were all praised for talent. And this is part of the reason why none of you can achieve your health and fitness goals, because you're so invested in your vision of yourself, or you're so invested in not being seen as talented, and you don't even know this. It's not, you're not even cognizant of this. This is what's going on, and subliminally in a way that you're not even aware of. But we're all so invested in being seen in a certain way, we're terrified to go out and get the data. So what happened to me when I was at the athletics meet was I was terrified to find out who I actually was. Because genuinely I knew that who I actually was did not match the person that I was pretending to be. Because whenever I was younger, was naturally talented as a child. I could sing, I could dance, I could talk, I could, like, all of the things that I am now, right? But imagine a really cute, chubby faced little girl with a blunt fringe who was just smiling and happy all the time and wanting to chat to everybody. And I could horse ride and I could run and I could dance and I could do all these things. But it wasn't even that I was really particularly good at everything. I was just willing to do it publicly. And whenever this sweet, exuberant little girl is in front of you, your natural instinct is to go, oh, well done. You're so talented. And of course, I lived beside my grandmother and my great grandmother. Their house joined onto ours. So I was brought up in a very traditional family bosom, if you like. We saw my granny, my mum's mum all the time. My aunt lived just down the road. My other aunt lived just down the road. We had a very, very close knit family. So I was brought up with a lot of aunts and uncles and grandparents who all praised me all the time. And I was the youngest of 3 girls. So I was little Kimmy, always known as little Kimmy. And little Kimmy was just praise was just lavished upon little Kimmy. So I grew up really, really, really terrified of losing that, but not even realizing that I was terrified of losing it. And so I grew up as a big, fat fucking liar. I'm not even kidding. Like, I constantly pretended to be better than I was, older than I was, more talented than I was. Like, in every single way, I grew up pretending that I was something that I wasn't. And if I didn't know how to do something, or I didn't feel like I could, figure something out, I just pretended that I could. And so, or if I failed at something, I pretended that I didn't really want it anyway. Like going over my ankle, I feigned an injury to get out of doing the meet, because doing the actual race might give me some reality data which contradicted the image to the world that I was trying to portray. And this is what praising children for talent actually does. And so I guess that a lot of this started as well whenever I have a very, very vivid memory of coming back from Irish dancing. My mum had decided to, send us to Irish dancing when we were younger. And I remember going to Irish dancing one Tuesday or whatever it was. And we learned like a new jig. And I came home and my mum would have sent us into my grandmother. She would go and show your grandma and your nana your new jig. And of course, I was always sent in to show off. And so I went in and I was like, Grandma, look at the new jig that we learned. And I remember like hopping around, like a baby giraffe, trying to, probably a baby hippo actually, because I was so chubby when I was younger. Like I remember hopping around and like trying to remember the moves. And it was a very, I was like 5, right? Or 4, maybe 4 or 5. And it was, didn't really remember what it was we learned. I remembered a couple of them, but, I'd only done it once for an hour in a class. And so I remember kind of hopping around and thinking, oh, I don't really remember. And I remember thinking this really doesn't look too good. But my grandparents were going, bravo, Kimmy. Oh, bravo. Oh, that's so wonderful. Oh, they were just so delighted with everything that we did. They were the most wonderful. My grandma was the most wonderful, kind country woman, never saw her. Never heard her speak a crossword in her entire life. And they were like, oh, Kimmy, you're so amazing, so wonderful. And the praise felt so good. And I remember thinking, I don't want the praise to stop. Okay. And I kind of then started making shit up. Right. And I was like dancing around and pretending, I showed them. And then I just started making shit up. And so I started dancing and dancing sideways and doing all this fun stuff. And they were like, oh, Kimmy, oh, and the more I danced and the more I did it, the more they clapped. And it felt so good. And I had this recognition that I was just totally making shit up and getting praised for it. And so I continued to make shit up and continue to get praise, continue to make shit up, continue to make more praise. And then eventually I got tired and I stopped. And I learned a very, very, very important lesson that day. The lesson that I learned was you can make shit up and pretend to be something that you're not and still get praised. Can you imagine how limiting that was for me moving forward in my life? Because whenever we're little kids, we build our entire belief structure when we're children. And the lessons that we learn, they're called postulates, okay? I made a postulate that you can make shit up and lie, basically. I was lying to my grandmother. I was like, oh, I learned this and I learned this and I learned this. I didn't. Like, had I been honest and said, I can't remember what else I learned, but do you want me to just dance for you anyway? Like, I still would have got the praise. But rather than being honest and saying, that's all I remember, but I'll just dance for you anyway, I lied. And when I lied, I got praised. And when I lied, I got praised. And so I learned growing up that you can lie about who you are and you'll still get the praise. So that's what I went for my entire life. I just pretended that I was something I was not because I was so terrified of losing the praise. Many, many, many of you will also have this, right? But you're maybe just not as self-aware as me and you don't realize that this is where it put in. Or this is where it was all downloaded, if you like. So I literally became a praise junkie and a liar. I'm not ashamed to admit it because I've overcome it now. And you're never ashamed to admit something that you've overcome. And hopefully at the end of this, you won't be afraid to admit something that you haven't overcome, but that you've become aware of. So I literally became a praise junkie and a liar. And this carried through my entire life until I started bodybuilding at the age of 37. 37. I went 37 years of age trying and failing and not acknowledging my failures and pretending that my failures weren't what they were. Like whenever I first started this, and I only overcame this in the last few years. Whenever I first, I would have started a business. Whenever I started the Work at Home Mums Network, which was a total failure online, people would have asked me, oh, what is it that you do, whatever. And I would have said, oh, the Work at Home Mums Network. And it's, and it's this and that, whatever. And they would have said, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's amazing. It's this and that and whatever. And then they would have said, or you would have had to put down like how much income you're making. I would always have doubled the income that I say you're on a form, do you earn X amount, this amount, 50,000, 25,000, whatever. I would always have doubled it. Or people would have asked me online, not how much money I was making or, oh, how many people do you have on your mailing list? I would have just made it up. Oh, I have like, 25,000. I had like 5,000. Or how much money are you making? Oh yeah, we have like 20 memberships a month. I maybe had 2 memberships a month. I literally just made shit up my entire life because I genuinely believed that it meant something about me if I wasn't the best I could possibly be. If I wasn't succeeding, I was a total and utter failure. I believe that I was a failure. Me personally, my personhood, Kim Constable is a failure, which isn't true. Kim Constable fails Kim Constable is a wonderful, strong, compassionate human being, talented, smart, all of these things. That's who I am at my core. Kim Constable is a hard worker. Kim Constable is all these different things. But Kim Constable is not a failure. Failing in one aspect does not mean that I am a failure. It means that I have failed. Just like the other day, I was saying about how if you have fat on your body, it doesn't mean that you are fat. Quite often we want to look in the mirror and we go, oh my God, I am so fat. You are not fat, just like you are not a fingernail. You have fingernails, right? But you would never look at yourself and say, oh my God, I am a fucking fingernail. Like it's ridiculous when you think about it. But yet you have 10 fingernails or eight fingernails and two thumbnails. So, but we say, I am fat rather than interesting. I have fat and I have more fat than I would like. So, how can I change this situation? But because we attach the fat to our personhood, we make it mean something about us. And when something about us isn't good, you know what we do? We stick it in the box and we slap a lid on it because it feels so bad to acknowledge that we are bad. It's all tied up with shame. Anybody who's ever listened to Brene Brown will know that she teaches a lot about shame. I am bad is all tied up with shame. I do bad things or I did something bad is not tied up with shame. Those of you will remember what is now called Fatgate from last week. I've talked about it so far. I did something bad. Bad for some people. I sent out an email which had a subject line which many people find offensive. I didn't realize they would find it offensive. Should I have realized? Maybe, but I didn't. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Hindsight is 2020. As soon as I realized that I had caused hurt, I immediately worked to repair the damage, and I worked very hard to repair the damage. I didn't feel bad one single moment. I didn't feel that I felt bad that I had created pain in some people, but I never once attached it to my personhood. I was never like, oh my God, I'm so awful. Oh my God, I should have seen this coming. Oh my God, I am such a dick. I never had one moment of negative self-talk. And you ask anyone on my team and they will tell you, not at one point did I make it mean anything about me. I just recognized the failure and I worked to fix the failure and I learned from it so it won't happen again. That's all you can do when you fail. But that is how you separate the data from your personhood. But unfortunately, many of us are not able to do this. And the reason that we're not, because we're not able to do this, is one of the main reasons we're not able to achieve our fitness goals because we fail at something. We fail to follow through on our diet. We say we're going to have a salad and we end up eating a pizza. We say we're going to go to the gym and we end up lying on the couch. We say we're going to go for a run and we end up going for dinner with a friend instead. Or we say we're going to get up in the morning and the alarm goes off and I'm tired. So I turn it off and I go back to sleep. These are all failure points. It doesn't mean that you are bad or you are lazy or you are unmotivated. It means nothing about you as a person. You are perfect. You are a beautiful living representation of what it means to be human. Everything about you is perfect. Your mind is perfect. Your brain is perfect. Your body is perfect. Your metabolism is perfect. It's all beautiful and perfect. But sometimes this beautiful and perfect entity fails and makes mistakes. And that is the beauty of being human. And the more we can acknowledge the data and separate it from our personhood and not make it about us, the faster we will achieve our fitness goals. It is the one thing, the biggest thing that stops us from getting where we want to go because we won't acknowledge the data and we won't acknowledge the failure. And so it was only when I started bodybuilding that I really began to transform this. Because here's the really interesting thing about bodybuilding. It was the first time in my life that I couldn't blag it. I couldn't pretend that I had more muscle than I had. I couldn't pretend that I was putting in more effort than I was putting in. I have this sometimes in the groups. People will follow one of my shred programs and then they'll come into the group and they'll say, I followed this program to the letter for 8 weeks and my body didn't change one single bit. And we're like, Liar, liar, pants on fire. We know, because here's the thing, we have consistent data over 6 years and 500,000 women. That's how many programs we've sold in 6 years, 500,000 programs. We have consistent data between me, the coaches, other bodybuilders, the people who followed our programs, that if you follow the program exactly as laid out, you will get the results. They may not be the results you expected. They may not be the results that you wanted, but you will get results. It is physically impossible in science to follow one of my shred programs and not get the results, or not get a result, to not lose body fat. Physically and scientifically impossible. So we know when someone comes in and goes, I followed your program and I didn't get results. Doesn't happen very often because we're very data driven in the company. We know that they're lying. We know that they may have done some of the exercise, but not all. They may have done some of the cardio, but not all. They may have followed a bit of the meal plan, but not all. We know that they're lying, but really the only person that they're affecting by lying is themselves, because what they would be better to do to achieve their goal is look at where they failed so they could fix the failure. So when I started bodybuilding, I realized I couldn't blag it. I couldn't pretend that I had more muscle than I had. I couldn't cheat it. I couldn't buy it. I couldn't do anything but build it. And that is one of the most wonderful things about bodybuilding, is that you get consistent data about yourself and about the process and about the amount of effort that it takes to achieve anything worthwhile. It's the same with my business. People ask me or talk to me every day about business, and they say, oh, I did my first launch and I only made like $12,000, or it flopped, or my Facebook ads aren't working, or this and that, whatever. And they go like, why did this happen? I'm like, well, because the main problem is you expected it to be easy, or easier than it is. It's not easy. It's not easy to build a business. It's insanely hard every single day. The bigger your business gets, the harder it is. My life is insanely hard every single day. But I've just become used to the fact that anything I want takes time and dedication and patience, and is hard. I recently started horse riding again. I haven't horse ridden for 20 years. And I started horse riding again. I've started competing at a very high level, much higher than I competed at years ago. I've ridden horses my entire life, and I used to compete 20 years ago, but I've never competed to the level that I'm competing at now. And I knew when I started riding 2 years ago that it was going to take time, effort, and consistency for me to improve. And so I never got frustrated. I never got upset. Anytime I failed spectacularly, which I do all the time, because I'm always pushing myself more and more and more, I fail and I fail and I fail because I'm pushing myself outside my comfort zone. And every time I fail, I don't make it mean anything about me. It's just showing me where I still have work to do. And my trainer says to me all the time, he says, you're so different to every other person that I teach, because you're committed, you're disciplined, you show up, and you just get on with it. He said, you're always happy. You don't make it mean anything about you. I said, that's because I'm not invested in anything but the personal growth. I don't care about the winning. I don't care if people say, oh, well done, she's amazing. I don't go out and jump and compete in internationals for people to say, oh, there's Kim Constable, there's this culted vegan. I would have years ago. That's what I would have been going for. I would have cared a lot about what people thought. So if I had have gone out and, like, the last international I did a few weeks ago, through rider and horse mishap, I fell off in the show jumping. I came into a fence. It was a big fence. I expected him to take off. I was ready for him to take off. He looked into the bottom of the fence, and then he took off, and I was in front of the movement. He took this really awkward leap, and I hit the deck. I was eliminated. Couldn't compete in the cross country. But it was just a mistake. Like, I didn't care what people were thinking of me. I wasn't caring. People were going, do you see Kim Constable? She fell off, because people love to see me fail, right? I don't care. It means nothing about me. But now I realize I need to work more on my show jumping. So it was great. I was so thankful for the failure, because now I need to work more on my show jumping. And so I've been training more with show jumping at home. I've been going show jumping on the weekends. I've been really working on my show jumping, because I realized, this is an area that still needs a lot of work. So when you go out and you push and then you fail, you go, okay, this is an area where I'm still limited. So you work on that area, and then you slowly overcome it. And then you push again and you fail, and you go, right, this is an area where I'm limited. So you work on that area. But many people push and then they fail, and they go, oh my God, I'm a failure. I can't even show up. I can't be just like, let's imagine the internal dialogue. Something. I can't even get up in the morning. I mean, what's wrong with me? Like, I can't even get out of bed in the morning and just go for a run. I mean, it's one run. It's one, like, I'm just such a bad person. No, like, you're not, right? It's a little bit dramatic. I get it. But people go, I am bad. Why can I not get out of bed in the morning? Why can I not follow through? Because you're limited and now you have failure data. And so rather than judging yourself and punishing yourself and making a big deal out of it and suffering over it, which is really what you're doing, right? I'm just not the kind of person who could do this. Well, instead of putting all your energy into suffering over it, right? Why don't you just put your energy into fixing it? It takes more energy to suffer over it than it does to just fix it. Oh, interesting. I'm not the kind of person who can get out of bed. Wow, I had a hypothesis that I could get up every morning at 6 o'clock and run. And when the alarm goes off at 6 o'clock, I turn it off and go back to sleep. Clearly, this is a failure. How can I overcome this? What steps can I take to address the failure? It's simple, but we don't do that. We make it about us, about our personhood. And this is because most of us were praised for being talented as children, rather than being praised for effort. Because when you're praised for effort, you take on things that are harder and harder and harder. So hopefully by now you've realized that the example I was giving you in the beginning about the children praised for talent, the children praised for effort was really just a metaphor for you, mature women in this group watching this, because really you're just little kids at heart. And you're all still going after being praised for talent. And that's why you beat yourself up. Because if you can't achieve your goals, right, and you beat yourself up, well, no one else is going to beat you up if you're already beating yourself up, right? But is it beating you better than a non-beating you? So if you're like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. Like, I just can't even get up in the morning and go for that run that I said I was going to go for. Well, if you're doing that to yourself, no one else is going to do it to you, right? So that's what we're all trying to avoid. Where I'm going to beat myself up. And if I beat myself up enough, it means that no one else will beat me up. Well, how about you flip to the other side, right? And start praising yourself for effort. Well, Kim, you know what? Well done. Well done. You took the first step to actually wanting to change and you set the alarm and you said you were going to get up. Well done for the effort of moving towards your fitness goals. Well done, Kim. Okay, but you couldn't actually get up in the morning, so you failed. So that's great. Now we have data. I can't get up in the morning. So how am I going to overcome this failure? You set steps in place to overcome the failure. You go to bed and you set the alarm at the other side of the room. You sleep in your bloody gym gear, if that's what it takes. You put your shoes by the bed. You set your coffee up. So literally all you have to do is press the button, or you have a Mr. Coffee machine, you put it on a timer. If you need coffee before you can move in the morning, like me, you set all these things up, and then you promise yourself that when that alarm goes off, the minute it goes off, you're going to turn it off, pull back the duvet and get out of bed. And the next morning when the alarm goes off, you do it. And then you get the data. How does that feel? Did that work? Did that not work? So every single step of the way, you get the data, get the data, get the data, get the data. Find the failure, find the failure, find the failure, find the failure. And achieving a goal, even if it's a big, massive, bloody goal, is really just about setting the goal, moving towards the goal, failing along the way and getting the data and changing, getting the data, changing, getting the data, changing, working, learning, growing, get the data. So fail, get the data, try something new, fail again, get the data, try something new. It's just a next step process. If you remove your need to be seen in a certain way, or your need to be seen as talented, or your need to beat yourself up. Now, it could just be a case of I want it, okay? You might want it. And so therefore, no amount of, if you just want it, you're never, ever, ever going to achieve it, no matter how many times you fail or get the data or whatever, because it's not going to be important enough for you to push through. Your why has to be strong enough to push you through. Whenever I was doing the athletics meet, I was only doing it to get the praise. Like I just wanted the short-term win of going out there. My teacher told me I was super talented. I wanted more of that praise. I wanted to go out there and do really well in the athletics meet and win or come. I wanted the glory of winning or coming first or second, and then first, second, or third. And then whenever I got there, I realized, oh my God, if I fail, not only am I going to lose my teacher's not going to think that I'm talented anymore. So I'm going to lose that, but I'm also going to lose the race, and that's going to be even worse. So I thought my whole self-esteem was on the line here. So I chose to give up and not even do it in the first place. But that's because I wasn't really going for any long-term goal. I was going for the short-term praise. So you have to be very clear about what it is you're going for. If you're going for short-term praise, if you're going for something that comes from someone else, which is to fulfill a short-term dopamine hit, that's never going to be enough to carry you through to success. In bodybuilding, I decided that I wanted to step on stage as a bikini athlete, but at the same time, I wanted to build a business. So the reason why I was able to be as successful as I am is because I was going after two goals at the same time, and one was serving the other. I was building my business while building my body. And anyone who knows me will know I never do things by halves. I like to make my life as difficult as it can possibly be. So the two were inextricably linked for me, and it made me push harder and harder and harder. So every time I failed, every time I didn't, I didn't show up, or I didn't do what needed to be done, or anytime I looked in the mirror and was like, where is all this muscle? I'm putting in so much effort. Why is the muscle not appearing? I realized it was just data. I knew that I couldn't push any harder. I knew I couldn't do any more than I was doing. I didn't think I could anyway. And then I met Mark Getty and I realized it's very possible to push harder. Yeah. So anyway, it's a story for another day. Um, I couldn't, I wanted it so badly that I was willing to fail and fail and fail and readjust and readjust and fail and readjust every single time in order to get where I was going to go, because my why was big enough. The thing that I wanted in the long term was big enough. That's why it's so important to set a real good, solid long term goal. And with a deadline, a goal with a deadline. Like I knew I was going to stand on stage within 12 months. So I had a deadline. That's why having the deadline of a stage or something really big, or a photo shoot or a big birthday or a wedding or a vacation, it's really, really good to keep you motivated. And each of us needs to have that, but that's coming later in the week. So what else have I written here? Final point. You have to ask yourself if you want to win now or win in the long term. I wasn't committed to athletics in the long term. I just wanted the glory of the short term win. I was committed to bodybuilding and standing on stage and building a business. So I was willing to fail to get the data so I could improve. If you don't know your why, you'll never stick to your how. Do you want the short term dopamine hit of a couple of pounds of weight loss, or are you committed to change in the long term? It's necessary to be honest about this for yourself. So here is your homework assignment for today. First of all, you are going to snap that selfie. Yep, seriously. It might feel daunting, but grab your smartphone. Let me just hang on 1 second here. I need to pull this whole thing across so I can see what I've written. Grab your smartphone and take that selfie in your underwear. This isn't about self-loathing. It's about getting a clear, honest snapshot of where you're starting. Look at it as your before photo, a starting point that's going to make your future after photo look incredible. Remember, nobody but you is going to see this photo, so let go of judgment and focus on the journey ahead. Taking a selfie of in your underwear of where you are now, even if you've been on your health and fitness journey for a while, is so empowering because it shows you where you are in relationship to where you want to be. And a lot of us pretend that things aren't as bad as they are, especially if you're very overweight or quite overweight, or you've been trying and failing or yo-yo dieting for a while, or maybe you were lean and then you fell off the wagon and now you put all the weight back on again. Most of us just don't want to get the data. We really don't want to see how bad the damage is. But closing your eyes to reality doesn't mean that reality doesn't exist. It just means that you're pretending it doesn't exist, which is a lie. So snap the selfie, get the data, and we're going to move forward from there. Number 2, measure what matters. Numbers can be your friends, especially when you're striving for change. Get real with the stats. Step on that scale, take your measurements, and jot down your current fitness level. Don't worry, this isn't about judgment. It's about having concrete data to track your progress. Sometimes seeing those numbers can be the push that you need to commit to change and celebrate every step forward. So from here on in, I want you to get as much data as possible. I want you to take all your measurements, right? I want you to do your hips, your waist, your boobs, your arms. I want you to step on the scale. I want you to take photos of yourself. I want you to start looking at your macros and your calories, start tracking what you're eating. If you don't know how to track macros and calories, then just write down what you're eating, take photos of your eating of everything that you put in your mouth before you put it in your mouth. I want you to start getting real about where you are now, what you're eating, what you're weighing, what you're looking like, everything that's causing you to be where you don't want to be. You have to get clear on everything that's causing you to be in a situation that you don't want to be in. And no stone can be left unturned. Start tracking and measuring everything to get your accurate starting point. excuse me, place your before picture beside your body goal picture. So I want you to find a picture online of someone whose body you would love to have. This is your ultimate body goal. I don't care if she's 18 and you're 58. It's meant to inspire, not achieve. Place your picture beside your body goal using one of the apps, such as Layout, is one that I love, and assess how far you are away from your goal. So a lot of people who want to be let me tell you a really quick story about this. We used to, loads of you have heard this. Two things. We used to travel first class to Australia. We used to travel to Australia every single year, not first class, every 2 years in economy with 4 kids. And every day, every time we turned onto the plane, we had to take two planes. Business and first class in the big planes are upstairs, so you never see them. But every time we turned on to, we walked onto the plane and we turned right instead of left. I used to look into business class. I used to think, oh my God, how lovely would that be to sit in there with that beautiful big seat and the lovely food and being able to lie down flat and 4 young kids. It was hell on earth. But we never were able to travel economy until I became successful. Oh, sorry, never able to travel first class until I became successful. Now we only ever travel first or business class with all of the kids. And it really is so sweet. But had I not seen business class with my own eyes every time I walked onto the plane, I would never have been able to make a contrast between that and economy. Same as whenever my neighbor Caroline had her 60th birthday, I think it was 8 years ago now, they took us and their whole family, were very, very close, to stay in the Marbella Club. Now, they are wealthy, and so they took everyone to stay in the Marbella Club in Marbella. I had never been to the Marbella Club before, but I experienced a level of opulence that I had not experienced before. And my family are very middle class. I went to private boarding school. We grew up, very well to do. But this was like the millionaires club. The Marbella Club has more money per capita than I have ever seen in very, very few hotels. Like everyone drives Maseratis and Aston Martins and Lamborghinis. Like it's not Porsches and BMWs. It's like they had last time we were there, they had a convention for Bugatti, I think it was. Like, who the hell has a Bugatti convention? Like, there are so few of them in the world, but they had one at the Marbella Club. So my point is, once we got there, I had never tasted or experienced anything like that in my life, but that became my new benchmark. I was like, I am going to be rich enough to holiday in the Marbella Club anytime I want. And then once I started holidaying in the Marbella Club, I became a new goal of I'm going to rent a villa in the Marbella Club. Like the villas are about 8,000 euros a night. And this year I achieved that goal. I took my two sisters and their husbands to the Marbella Club for 4 nights. And we rented a villa for 4 nights in the Marbella Club. And so I keep setting these benchmark goals for myself. But the reason why I'm telling you this isn't to brag. The reason I'm telling you this is because until I had that benchmark of where I wanted to be and compared it to where I was now, I didn't know where it was I was going. So you have to set your ideal body goal beside your current picture of where you are now, so you have a clear path of where you're going, and then you can just figure out the plan to get there. Okay? Make it sense? Hopefully. Lastly, I want you to document your story. This is optional but highly recommended. I want you to grab a journal or open a note on your phone and write down your story. What led you here? What memories do you have, like my memories, that turned you into, say, a praise junkie or stopped you from achieving your goals? Just write down anything that comes up. There's no right or wrong. What have been your struggles? What do you really want to achieve? This isn't just scribbling words. It's giving your journey a voice. When you put your thoughts on paper, it becomes real. It's like saying, hey, this is where I stand and I'm ready to change. Your story isn't set in stone. It's a living testament to your journey from where you are to where you're headed. And remember, these steps are about empowerment, not about dwelling on the past. You're not just facing your starting point, you're paving the way for your incredible journey ahead. And as you take these actions, remind yourself that every small step towards reality is a massive leap towards your goals. That's what I wrote here. So that's what you're going to do today. You are going to get real about your situation. You're going to get the data. You're going to write down your story. You're going to write down all of the things that you're going for, any awarenesses that you've had while watching this. Are you going for a dopamine hit? Are you going for praise? Do you just want your husband to love you? Are you really doing this for you, or are you doing this for some other reason? It doesn't matter if you're doing it for some other reason. I wanted to become rich so I could go and stay in the Marbella Club and fly first class. I would love to say. And years ago, I would have said, "Oh, I just want world peace. I want to help as many people as possible and feed starving children." While that's wonderful and altruistic, and not altruistic, actually, that means self-serving. But while that's wonderful, it isn't why I wanted to become rich. And if I had a said that it was, then I would have been lying. And whenever I tell people why I wanted to be rich, they go, "Oh, that's so shallow." And I'm like, yeah, maybe, but like, work for me. How rich are you? Let's compare. So, so you have to have your reasons are your reasons, right? They don't have to make sense to anybody else, but they have to be your reasons. You have to be clear about your reasons and why you're doing what you're doing. And that is the first step to achieving it. Okay, so I'm going to leave you now. I want you to go and do your homework. We're going to meet back here in 3 hours. And oh, there's Alexa talking to me. We're going to meet back here in 3 hours. And we're going to do a live Q&A. And I can't wait to hear what you came up with. I hope you've had really good awarenesses from today. If you think this was good, just you wait until you see what we've got tomorrow and Friday. It's going to be so exciting. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you enjoyed it. Sorry I went on for nearly an hour. I think you're just going to have to expect that they're all going to go on for an hour. And I will see you guys here in 3 hours. And we're going to have a live Q&A and we're going to have more fun together. Okay. Mwah. Sending you big hugs and kisses from me. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.